Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Difference Makers Show. I'm Lynn Sanders, your host, and I am really glad you're here today. Now more than ever, we're facing a world that's filled with upheaval. There's divisiveness, racism, healthcare concerns. How can we all pull ourselves out of this negativity and feel better? Well, today, I hope to give you some answers. The show's title is An Interfaith Friendship, an interfaith friendship that unites to do good in the world. And I'm honored to have three special guests with me. One is my rabbi, Rabbi Bruce Elder of Congregation Hakafah, and also Reverend Jeff Braun of the Winnetka Congregational Church, and also Asif Masood of the Muslim Community Center of Morton Grove. So I'd like to welcome all of you here today and ask you to share a little bit of your personal stories of how you got to where you are right now and connected together as an interfaith group.
We all met, Lynn, to jump in, we met at a remedial technology class which focuses on Facebook and other basic, things that people should know. I'm the least informed. That's why we're going to start with Bruce or Asif, not me, but that's how we met. I'm kidding.
Oh, I love that.
I was actually going to defer to you, Jeff, because you're the one who brought it together. So in your wonderful, loquacious way, please do spend some time sharing how that we have the responsibility. I mean, how we all got together.
Yes.
And by loquacious, he means, Jeff, will you please stop? So, yes, how we met, how the Spirit, God's broad Spirit brought us together. It was back in, wasn't it 2008, late 2017, and then going into 18. So in 17, we had Hurricane Harvey, and the desire within our congregation was to take a service trip, if you would, to go down and help with the recovery work after that torrential rain and all that flooding that hit Houston so desperately. And it just seemed like a wonderful idea to have this be not something we did alone, but we did in a multi-faith way. And so I first reached out to Bruce Elder, whom I knew, and he said that their Congregation Hakafah, was already planning a trip. Let's go together. We both were so excited about reaching out to the Muslim Community Center. We reached out to a colleague there who's someone we know very well, and she said, we've not gone on a trip like this before. We'll get back to you. It sounds exciting. And that's when we got introduced to Asif. And that's really, in short, how the friendship was first forged. And through that trip and subsequent trips, it has just absolutely deepened. So a common need and a common desire to be together, I think, is really the kind of the two cornerstones of our relationship.
I love that. And Asif, how did you feel when you got contacted?
I was terrified. Seriously, and of course there was a little fear, but it was like, okay, this sounds like a great idea. It's not something that I've been a part, it's not something that I had participated in before. And as we started more talking through it, because initially when I had gotten on, I'm like, I don't know if I can get off work. I'll get the logistics going, and then, get some folks to go. And then as we started talking, I'm like, okay, I have to go. I felt compelled to join the group. And so I ended up taking a week of vacation, which in January, and, we headed down to Houston.
Wow. So how many of there were you when you all got together, and what was that experience like? Any of you?
There were about, the longer it's been, the bigger the group gets. There were about 300 people. And no, there were about, there were 22 of us. Is that what it was?
Yeah, that's right.
And from all three houses of worship. And it was great. It was the opportunity. We stayed in two houses, Airbnb, that happened to be next to each other. A couple of people stayed at a local hotel. We ate our meals together. We communed together. We went to the work sites together, and we grew together.
And you repaired homes together.
We cleaned and we repaired. That indeed we did.
Wow.
And the work that we did whenever we were paired with somebody, we tried to make sure that it was with someone from a different house of worship, just so that we could build those relationships together.
So how did that feel for you? Let's say, Jeff, since you started the whole idea, what did it feel like for you to bring everyone together?
Well, I know I'm going to get flack both from Asif and Bruce when I say this. They're going to be like, "Oh yeah, what a goody for saying it." But I don't think it was my idea. I think it was God's prompting, and I think all of us were sort of ready to be brought together around an idea, and it happened to be something that prompted me in a given way, but it was a mutual idea and mutually leaned into. The moment that was most striking to me on the Houston trip, I think perhaps of all, and it was chock full of moments that were profound. If you could say there's one gem, or there are two gems per trip like this, per adventure, if you would, you'd be lucky. We had dozens of them. I mean, it just every day, every moment turned in even a deeper, a more powerful, a more knitting way. But the first night we were there, we all decided to gather at one of those two Airbnbs that were literally side by side. And I was standing just outside the kitchen and looking at the long line of everybody gathering around the food that had been prepared. And there is no way that you could have discerned that this was a group of people from 3 different houses of worship, some of whom had never met before. There's no way you would have been able to say this wasn't a group of long, acquainted friends or even family members gathering for a meal. There was such a sense of cohesion and seamless connection and joy as we gathered around that food. It was just stunning. And I think that's where my heart felt so full for the first time on that trip. We were there and it was already happening, and it just got even fuller as the trip went on. So that struck me before we even put our hands onto the actual labor of fixing the homes.
Oh, I love that. Connection of the heart, which we all have. And not everybody recognizes that, that we're really all connected. Any aha moments for you, Asif, from that trip?
I think, as Jeff stated, I mean, we came together so beautifully that night. And, our intention was, twofold, right? So during the day, we were singularly focused on rebuilding houses, right? As a group of folks. And then we also talked about, how do we connect in the evenings and talk about our cultures, our faiths, and get to learn about each other through our faiths, right? Because we were learning about each other during the day as well, but it was more one-on-one connections as you were working with other people. And I want to say, religion didn't matter in either of those settings. It was more just a way to even more deeply get to know each other. And so I think, and I don't remember the exact days what we did what, but we focused on Judaism one night, Christianity one night, and then Islam the third night, and then then we went to a mosque that night in Houston, where we actually had a meal and got to see this mosque and what they were doing and how they had opened up their doors. Right? That was actually really eye-opening and inspiring for me, that they opened up their doors when the flooding was happening and let people come in and house them in their gymnasium for days, right? So that really was moving to see.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Including their some of them had family pets, dogs that were brought in. There were 500 people in this gym that this mosque that we visited, all arranged by Asif. There were 500 people from the surrounding broader neighborhood, some of whom had never had any contact with the mosque, knew of it, saw it, were aware of its location, but never had any contact. And without hesitation, the stories that night that were told of how they welcomed these people in, and the meals that were provided, just to add this one other piece, again, the way we knit together in times of struggle or tragedy, and our true selves and our true purpose in life to be together is revealed. The people of the mosque, of that community, were making food, homemade meals that were then served to the people who were staying in that gymnasium while they were displaced from their homes. So this incredible inwelling of guests and this incredible upwelling of hospitality, how transformed that neighborhood must now be because of that kind of interaction.
That's so true, the ripple effects. And then your group had its own ripple effect of doing more trips. And I don't even have the order in front of me. But if you'd like, perhaps Bruce, you want to step in and say what happened after this trip as a result of this, because you went on more trips.
Well, so Lynn, in typical clergy fashion, I'm going to ignore your question and add to what they were just talking about.
Okay, go ahead.
That, if I may, really quickly.
Yes, please.
Asif, I don't know if you know this, but probably the most important thing for me on that Houston trip was the ride to the mosque. And that's because Asif was sitting next to me and we just started talking. And I asked him about his family. I asked him about his daughter. We just kind of talked. And as much as I have been involved in interfaith circles for a very long time, it was my first opportunity to have an intimate, real conversation with someone who's Muslim. And just to share and just talk. And I'm like, I really like this guy. Yeah, I mean, I still do, which is pretty amazing after all these years, right? But and so it's just that the opportunities of humanity, the moments of humanity, and the moments of just opportunity to let down our guards as to what we are and to focus on the who we are, and just be, was really important for me and has carried on. To answer your question, we have now gone 2 places. We went to Houston. We just got back a couple months ago from the border working in Matamoros and in Brownsville, supporting the camp of asylum seekers that has been set up in Matamoros as people are trying to seek asylum in our country. There was an opportunity in between those 2 trips to go to Puerto Rico to help after the hurricane down there. We were not able, we scheduled it together but couldn't go together, so some of us went 1 year and some of us went another year. We've also planned some stuff here that we can talk about, but it's been a slow, real kind of organic growth of us together. In many ways, we've come very far. In many ways, we're just beginning.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, that was pretty profound. So let's talk about the trip that you all went together on that I wish I could have gone on as well, to the border. And that's very highly charged. Unlike, fixing a home that's been affected by a hurricane, everyone knows we've got to fix the home. But the issue of caring for immigrants at the border, I think itself is very controversial. So tell us a little bit about that story, how that evolved. Any one of you.
And just to know, I'll let Bruce chime in here for a second, or Asif, but we've actually made 2 trips, one a smaller vanguard group, sort of a scouting trip, but representation from all 3 houses of worship, all 3 faith communities, and then a second larger one, which included an invitation for others to come. We'd kind of worked with one of the partners we worked with down there and scouted out how we were going to do this best. So we've actually taken 2 trips. One was back, I think it was October or November of 2019. And then, of course, we were down there in February of 2020 before COVID sort of shut everything down and dramatically increased the risks already present in the camp by adding in this horrible virus. So I'll let one of my 2 brothers take it from there.
I'm going to let Asif after I jump in.
Okay, Asif. I mean, what instigated this whole idea of going to feed the asylum seekers?
Before we go there, Lynn, I just want to push back on the presumption that immigration and issues of people rightfully seeking asylum in our country is controversial. I think it's been politicized, but the idea that humans are controversial in terms of their need for protection of their bodies and selves, to me is part of the, and I'm not accusing you of this, I think the way that our society's been able to politicize it makes it controversial, when in fact the only controversial part is, in my humble opinion, is the fact that we are preventing people from legally being able to seek that, which is part of the reason why we went down there. Go on, Asif, pick it up.
But it's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough, it was a tough trip. And actually what happened right before the trip, so if we go back a little bit and talk about an event that took place here, the day before, our 3 congregations got together for a run walk. And because it was that Sunday where we got together, and I'm trying to remember who we raised the money for, but we raised the money for an organization. And that was a beautiful thing too, right? So we came together. I can't remember how much. And so there was a group of us that walked. There was another group of us that ran. And then we had dinner right after that. And Bruce, Jeff, I don't know if you remember the name of that organization.
It was Facing History in Ourselves, right? Or was it A World of Difference? I always get them backwards. I think it's Facing History in Ourselves.
I think it was Facing History, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so so we had dinner and we went back home and we caught a 5 a.m. flight the next night to Harlington, which is right, and then drove to Matamoros. But But I think the scouting trip was because we've been wanting to do something together, another trip like this together. And I think it just came at very timely because I think Bruce was going to go down and he asked us if we wanted to join to see what things were like. And that was actually more focused because when we went back in February, we did a lot more. But the focus of the October trip was to help feed. And we also did help feed in February, but we expanded that to a lot more. But if you can imagine, we flew down and we did this over a couple of days. So the first day, we were like the chopping crew because there was another group from California that was there. And as it turns out, there were 6 women from California that were there. And here's 6 of us guys from Chicago that are there. And on that first night, we were the chopping crew for them. They cooked the meal. Then we packed the meal up onto wagons and then walk it across. So it's probably a good mile's walk across the Texas-Mexico border. And then the refugee camp is, at least at that time, it was right across the border where we can then take the food. And it was really, it was tough to see the people in the camps. That was the first time that we actually got to see them. And what was even tougher is like this concept of who am I, that I'm getting to decide how much food someone eats, right? Because we were doling out the food as people in lines were passing us by. And then also retain our own humanity in that we smile at them, or not even our humanity, retain their humanity in that we smile at them and, try to make conversation with them because these are people that are already so dehumanized, right? So a lot came up around that. And then you guys can pick it up at what we did the next day and then in February.
Tell us about how many people you were feeding, Asif, because I think this is pretty unbelievable what you were challenged
Yeah,
to
there
do.
were about 2,000 people in the camp. And on that first night, we probably fed about 1,200 because there's another group that's responsible for feeding. And on that first night, that group didn't show up. So folks from the other side were running over. And so we were there for about 3 hours, probably feeding about 1,200 people.
And then just to jump in, I was standing next to Asif for a good part of it. And I think we're both, I know Bruce was having a similar experience, but we were not on the line with him. There were these 2 small, maybe 6-foot or 8-foot round tables put close together. So viewed from above, they looked like a figure 8. And they were set at the end of a sidewalk about only 10 feet out from a chain link fence, which was effectively, it was on the Mexico side, but it was not authorized space for people to be in, except border patrol or whatever. And the people would line up in 2 lines and come down toward these 2 tables and then disperse once they got their meals. And for 3 straight hours, the lines never ceased. I mean, you kept looking down and thinking, is it getting shorter? And it never got shorter because people kept adding to the line. So when they're coming at you that way, not in an adversarial way, there's just so much energy coming down the line. And when you finally then are face to face and voice to voice with someone who's receiving a plate, often without a common language, it's very intense, not only just to physically stand there and to be serving and to try and do it quickly so people aren't waiting. They're hungry. They've been waiting all day maybe for the food. But to be standing there and feeling that energy come down the line was I think for me and Asif and I commented on it to each other, an unexpected element of what made it so intense and so humanizing at the same time. That changed when we were there later in February when the lines were going to come kind of along the side. They came from the right or the left, and then people would disperse from the table once they got their food. So you weren't seeing the length of the line, the depth of humanity as intensely in February. Not that the needs weren't the same. It just was experientially different for us as we were serving it.
Wow. Bruce, what was your experience like?
Well, what I would say overall is that it's impossible. Impossible is a strong word. It is very difficult
I'm not hearing your words for some reason.
Can you hear me now?
Can
Hello?
you hear Bruce?
I can hear Bruce.
You can hear Bruce. Okay, go ahead.
Can
I hear you again?
Hello?
Oh, now I hear you. Go ahead. Let me take this out.
Very few people have had problems hearing me. It's very difficult to experience, to let down your guard, and to experience, not just in Houston, but in other places, these types of events in which you are letting go of your ego and investing in the humanity of others and doing it intimately with others and not be affected by that. Not only affected personally, but to also just to appreciate and to grow together. And so, as I've told you, Lynn, and these guys know it, is that the ability for us to do this together, regardless of what we were doing, it was important, to see the sheer humanity of people who walked thousands of miles for the opportunity to get turned away at our border, right? And what they went through, and to have kids with smiles on their faces helping us serve. You can't go away from that not being affected by it. And to do it in relationship with people who aren't the people you normally hang out with, it creates not just a sense of camaraderie, but a sense of unity that allows us to grow together beyond that. Even, I haven't seen a couple of the people in a while from the church and the mosque. There is that connection there. Yes. I told you, Lynn, that the three of us you can see how we play off of each other. That's because there's a trust and an intimacy that is through our shared experience and our allowing ourselves to be vulnerable with each other. That happens through this. I'm not suggesting that we're using these trips to do that. God forbid, people in poverty, people who have been struggling have been used enough. But if that has been what we have been able to grow out of this so that we can continue in our own sense of becoming more humble and therefore turning that into meaningful interaction with each other and beyond, that's been the true gift for me.
Yes, definitely. Well, I understand you're all working together to increase that feeling of humanity and actually to allow all of the congregations to grow together. And I think beyond that, for the outside world to see that we all can work together in peace and honor each other's differences. So this scouting trip was basically setting the stage. Is that correct, for you to know how to get everything managed when you got all the groups together? And I'm sure it was so emotional. So what happened on the next trip where you invited everyone to come? How was that different? What was that like? Any of you, was that like a month later? I forgot the time.
No, it was in February, and this trip was, the number of people are about the same, but for me it was important because the previous trip, because it was our first one, and so it was a little bit more challenging for me to get, and it was last minute to get as many Muslims as I would have wanted on that first trip to Houston. This time around, it was actually pretty evenly divided between the three of us. And there were 22, 23, but there were 8 to 9 Muslims, 8 to 9 Christian, 8 to 9 Jews. So it was evenly spaced out that way. So for me, that was important to have that, to be, I guess, equally participating in this endeavor. And things changed a lot. Yes. When we were in October, we did a lot. We actually cooked. That second day, we went back. So the first day, we helped the folks from California cook, and they helped us cook this following day. But this time around, a new organization called World Central Kitchen came in with their with master chefs, right? So our responsibility was to actually cut everything up, but they got to cook, which allowed us to witness other things that were also going on. And I'll let one of you guys share kind of some of the other aspects of that trip. But just to pipe what Bruce said, there was a way after where we connected around feelings, and I think it was potent actually, because we each saw the things that we saw, and we were able to talk about what feelings came up for us around this. I think we did that the second night that we were there, and I think that was a way that we created a shared experience that regardless of our faith, and faith, that second trip, we didn't really even talk about our different faiths, because the first one, it was a little bit more structured. Second one, we thought we would make it more structured, but we didn't have to. The conversations just became organic, and on that second night, we really actually came together, I think, really more so on our emotions than anything else.
Wow. So the first trip prepared you to get ready for what you needed to know for that second trip, right? And
in a lot of ways, and then it's like some of it we use, a lot of it changed so much that it was almost like, all right, we're going to have to kind of make it up as we go.
So yeah, the reality on the ground had changed, Lynn, between October and February in terms of the number of people that were in the camp, in terms of our government shutting down the border even more to making it more difficult for people. The camp was moved by Matamoros from its makeshift place to on a levee of the Rio Grande, which with the rising rains was a real fear in the midst of COVID and rains that a lot of these people were going to be, of the asylum seekers were going to be washed away, literally. So the camp had grown to over 3,000. Our policies had become more difficult. The group that we went to in October, Team Brownsville, was still on the ground, but World Kitchen was now helping them, so we were supporting that. Witness MPP, that remained in Mexico, had started working down there that we had a relationship with through our work, shutting down the kids' camp in Tornillo the year before. So we did a number of different things. We served the food, but we also were court watchers to see the processes that went through. The court is set up in a tent, a makeshift tent on the border, and people are brought in. There is a judge on a screen who is hanging out in Houston or Dallas or in Harlingen or somewhere else, who these are just first review meetings, but we were there to witness that. We also were just kind of watching to see the flow of people coming in and out and learning and basically listening. Because the number one thing we need to do is listen to the people and see what the situation is so that we can report back and then work to end it. So there was a lot more to do. It was a lot more severe, the situation. In a lot of ways, people were a little better off. They had better tents and more people serving them different kinds of food. But the situation is definitely very bad there.
Wow. How about you, Jeff? What did you experience that second time?
It's so hard to. It's a great question, Lynn. It's so hard to pick, and I think Bruce and Asif would say exactly the same. It's just so hard to pick one thread or one aspect because these trips are so immersive. They're so profound in the way they open you, they permeate you, they call you out of your comfort, and they also provide tremendous comfort. Not creature comforts or comfort in terms of knowing all is well, all the problems have been solved, but comfort in the sense of that shared humanity that was mentioned back at the very beginning by Bruce. And to draw out one piece of this trip, again, it seems like all I care about is food, right? I never mentioned the work. All I care about is the stuff after. But in our processing, which Asif had mentioned, was not really structured at all. It was very much emotion-based and observation-based and lifting up what we'd witnessed and processing that with one another. Not always resolving it, just sharing it in a sacred context, a sacred circle. I felt on all the evenings on this second trip, there was just such an amazing liquid presence to the Holy Spirit. It's like we were swimming in connectedness, and our sharing was both a way of deepening the connection that we had to begin with, and it was a way of just naming what already was. So there was a becoming closer, and there was a naming of how we couldn't possibly get any closer, both at the same time. And there was such care in that room. There was such profound care as people would say something that maybe elicited laughter, or someone would be moved to tears, or someone was unable to find words because they were so troubled by what they saw. And it was just such a sense of holding, being in this sacred crucible to hold what was being lifted. And it felt holy. It felt holy. Truly did. And as far as an inspiration for anyone who is listening to this, who wants to consider these kinds of trips, you may think, how could we go on a trip with brothers, sisters, friends of other faith traditions? How would it work out? It will work out amazingly. Bring your hearts, your intentionality, open yourselves. No plans are going to fall apart. You're going to need to roll with it on the fly. But if you let God in and you let each other in, it is like heaven on earth. And that's in the midst of all these problems that are so intransigent. It's not to celebrate them or push them aside. is to say that sense of God breaking into us and through us happens. And it happens on these trips in such a palpable way. None of us have the right words to express it. I mean, we're scratching at a scratch on the surface when we say these things.
I think you're scratching very well. I mean, I'm feeling very moved listening to you right now. I think what
He
you're
can do that
talking
to you.
about,
He uses big words to do that to you. So that's good.
yeah, really.
The man who called me loquacious, right?
If I can just add two quick things, Lynn. One is
Please,
that
go ahead.
we don't have to run away to do that stuff. That was I mean, us being out of our own environments allowed us to get out of our own selves in a lot of ways, but we have work to do here. We're also, I want to make clear, we're not using people who are poor and vulnerable in order to elevate ourselves. If anything, it's opened ourselves up to the humanity and the pain that is being inflicted on people in our name so unnecessarily. And the third thing, perhaps one of the most profound things of going over the border as white people with people of color, and working with people of color who are having problems being brought into this country, and being there with people of color, and then realizing that what's going on the border is an extension of the policies of our country that have gone back all the way to the founding of our country, both with Native Americans, indigenous people, and African Americans, and to have that in our face and to see that it's being done in our name, which means we are doing it. Right? If anything we got out of it is the need to continue to show that what we're doing is the normal. And to suggest that Christians, Jews, and Muslims coming together is somehow abnormal or somehow unusual is such an indictment of the soul and heart of our country, but also of the notion of what it means to be human. And so to be there and to see the confrontation of our explicit abuse of people of color. And again, it wasn't lost on us that folks from the Muslim community are people of color as well, and how they felt about this, and our ability to process that somewhat as well. It ripples not only to other people, but within our own souls and all of our work as we carry to hopefully be a little more gentler and a little more softer how we work and considerate, right, of movements that are trying to empower disempowered people in this country.
Right. Didn't you say earlier that you had all experienced some pushback when you told people that you were working together as a multi-faith group or interfaith group? Didn't people make comments about that?
I don't know that it was pushback per se. It was more like shock or surprise that how is this even possible, right? And I think we heard that both in Houston as well as in on the border. When we told them who we were and that we had arrived together, it was kind of a surprise. Really? That you guys are working together, like you're not at each other's throats or whatever? Like it was surprise.
They assumed that there would be some problems, and you're showing them
either some problems or just that they weren't even open to that it would be possible. Yeah. But it was good. It opened the door for a conversation, right?
And every time that we like the third time you say, yeah, no, really, no, we're here together. Lynn, the response was this like reflexive, widening of the eyes, a broadening of a smile, this kind of glow from the person's heart. You could just see their aura kind of, light up like, wow, that's really cool. I mean, they were still stunned, but they were sort of beguiled by the idea that this not only could be, but was actually happening. And I think we really view these trips as our very humble attempt to be part of the antithesis to the prevailing thesis, which is that, well, of course you couldn't do that, or religion is a source of division. It's the source of all great division in the world. And maybe it's been misused that way, but the golden thread that is inherent in all our faiths of serving God and one's fellow human citizens of the world, that's what we're rallying around. And we do it imperfectly and humbly. And if I'm involved with logistics, very, very, very clumsily, but we do it because I think that there's this sense of call and of great humility, both at the same time. And I really think the togetherness that we build becomes not only a state of being we carry with us, it becomes a tool. And then we apply that tool to specific sacred work, be it in Houston or on the Texas border with regards to immigration, or right here at home. with regards to fundraising for an organization that helps school curriculum to actually reflect the truth of history, not some whitewashed version. And that can hopefully raise awareness about the topics we're focusing on, the needs we're addressing, but also create inspiration for others to try this same grassroots thing. And I think those are the pieces that have threaded through this: a togetherness, a sacred work with a specific focus, and awareness of the needs that we are trying to attend to. And we're but one of many groups attending to these broader needs. And an inspiration that, hey, give it a try, step in, do something. So it's very grassroots. It's not an attempt to fix the whole world in one stroke. It's an attempt to do our part and to become more human in the process.
Right, one step at a time. I was going to ask all of you, that was beautiful. What were the lessons, and you just spoke of them, that each of you feel you learned from this experience? Because there are going to be more, I know. We just have to move forward with whatever we can.
So,
Bruce?
Asif talked about it earlier, alluded to it, and Jeff just did. For me, probably the most important lesson, or one of them, despite what else we've been speaking of, is so this interfaith walk run that we had at the end of October, we had invited the Baha'i community and the Sikh community to participate as well. And so you had over 100 people running or walking, and then another, mostly the same, but other 100, 125, 130 people sharing a potluck dinner afterwards. And I don't know if, Lynn, if you were at the dinner.
Yeah, definitely did. I loved every minute.
To me, the most important lesson, which also plays into one of my colleagues here, friends alluded to, is who cares about the planning? The planning is important, but at that dinner, when we tried to get the program started, I don't know if you remember this, but people didn't want it to start because they were just all hanging out, talking, enjoying each other. They were like, shut up, just let us do this, right? And so what that's, and the energy that was in the room when you've got 5 houses of worship, 4 primarily, and some from the Baha'i community, that was their 200th anniversary, their bicentennial, so they couldn't participate. Bicentennial or 150 years?
It was a big one. I remember the
It was a big one. It was a big one. They couldn't participate as much as they would have liked, but to see the energy and the dynamic and the colors, and I'm not talking about skin color, the colors of the conversation and the clothing and the food and the smells. This was, for me, if I had any pride in our country, it was right there. And it happened not because we planned it. It happened because in the spaces in which we didn't plan.
Yeah.
And so to allow people to just be together in a space that acknowledges and admires equity, equality, and togetherness, don't try to mess that up, because that's what you'll do. And that, to me, was the lesson, is that do what you want to do, but allow yourself to be and allow other people to be with you.
Well, you provided the space for all of us to gather together. That was the point. So everyone could come together. Normally, we wouldn't be perhaps knocking on a stranger's door to say, hey, you want to get together with me? But all of you together brought us together as a whole. So let me ask you all, where do you see this going at this point in time, given that we all have to be aware of social distancing? But what can we all do? We, and not just our 3 communities, but the world at large, what can we do as a people to build togetherness in the midst of the craziness that's around us right now? Because I'm all about focusing on positivity, because I know that our inner reflects our outer. What we are feeling on the inside reflects what's going on outside.
Asif, I think you're the most positive of the 3 of us, so why don't you give the answer?
That's not necessarily true. I mean, there's probably multiple things. You know, we pre-COVID, we planned to come. We were going to go back in the summer, spring timeframe, and COVID kind of threw that off. But we did meet together in June to reflect on the trip in February, because one of the things that we did talk about was it is our duty to share what's going on down there, right? To see it, one thing, and I would actually recommend, if you can get down there post-COVID or whatever. And I was saying this before, like, it is your duty to go down there and see it with your own eyes. Yes. But not everybody has the resources or the means or, you know, whatever, to get down there. And if you can't get down there, then do something, right? And
down there meaning the border of Texas.
The border itself, to see, because we can talk about it as much as we want, but to see a refugee in their tent it's a whole different experience, and a feeling that, you know, witnessing it firsthand is a whole different thing, right? So so that's something that I would say anybody that should go down and witness. But secondarily, our mission was not everybody can go down, so we need to share this information with other people across the country, because some people don't know, some people don't know the severity. We talked about a lot of the, you know, feeding and seeing. Of course, the couple things that we didn't talk about was there was a converted child prison, a converted Walmart that got turned into a child prison that was down there. And we were also watching deportation flights, which is actually probably the most confronting out of the things that we saw. People being loaded up into airplanes and being flown out and not knowing where they were going, right? So for us to share those things. And the third thing is, you know, the refugees aren't just at the border. We have refugees in Chicago in our local prisons. And so how can we get involved? And there are ways to do that, but how can we get involved locally and be connected with the refugees that are in our local prison systems?
And what can we do? And what could we do as outsiders? You know, maybe you have ideas for that.
Yeah, I don't know, Jeff, Bruce, if you want to chime in.
I'll let Bruce specifically mention if there are details on the immigration piece, because he's a little bit better versed in that than I am. And Bruce, maybe this is a good time, if that's what you were wanting, Lynn, is, you know, how can we sink our teeth into this issue, be it via a trip, post-COVID, obviously, or right now, that's where we want to go. I think Bruce or Asif are best to speak to that.
Well, or even just what can we as people do to make a difference and bring, like you are representing how peoples can come together, different faiths, and do good in the world. What can people listening to this right now do to kind of counteract what they're seeing on the news media of divisiveness and racism and negativity? I believe that there's always, you know, light at the end of the tunnel, that we can look towards the light. What can we do now? Do you have any words of wisdom or suggestions?
So I'll jump in. I think in the context of our faith communities, assuming one has a faith community, if you don't, that's fine. That's not the only vehicle for this, but ours is faith grounded and faith expressive and faith guided. So I'll start there. I really feel like if you are, in any way a leader like Asif or Bruce or I are in our communities, it's to keep creating and allowing space for one another, for deep human needs within ourselves and, others' needs to be able to be addressed and to be attended to, and allowing space and creating space for God to come in, as Bruce said, through those fractures, through those gaps, through the broken moments that become the most illuminating moments. And if you are a member of a faith community and you are in any way inspired by what we're doing, which is not to pat ourselves on the back, it's to say, well, that looks like something I'd want to do, to go to your leaders, your lay leaders or your clergy, and to say, hey, what might we do to embody the truth of our interconnectedness? God made us that way. And under one broad banner of love and justice and peace, we are all born. And whatever our given tradition is or is not, we have the capacity to embody that wholeness that we are complicitous in fracturing with our behaviors. So, hey, could we do this? Could we do a walk? Could we have a lunch? Could we do a fundraiser together? And just start small and let it start growing. Both Asif and Bruce mentioned this, and I want to echo it. We didn't really start that big. We picked something, we put a stake in the ground, we said, hey, who wants to go? And people just came. Don't doubt people will want to do this. So I think you can do it as a leader, like we three happen to be. You can do it as someone who's in a church who doesn't see it, in a congregation, in a mosque that wants it. And it's like calling your congressman, right? Talk to your leaders and say, what can we do? And I think starting small and knowing that you can make an impact is very important.
I love that. I was thinking of the Field of Dreams line, when you build it, if you build it, they will come. Mm-hmm. You just built it. Bruce?
I think you can go even smaller than that. And that really is, Lynn, the only thing that when you said that we provided the space, you're right, we rented the room for everyone to come together. Mm-hmm. And it's more difficult in a time of COVID, but as things are opening up a little bit, I would challenge each of us Simply knock on a door of someone who lives next to you that you might not know. Start small. It doesn't have to be someone who's from a different faith. Maybe they are, who's, from a different, we all have different experiences. Start small. Anyone who's watching this can get in touch with you, Lynn, and you can put them in touch with us individually. We're more than happy to talk to people about thoughts and ideas that don't have to be so big or can be big. But most importantly, any of us can knock on the door of the neighbor you don't know and say, hey, let's get to know each other. It sounds hokey, but it's so elemental, and it's so, I would have done it. But I have through some neighbors right here, right? They live a little farther away, but you know what I mean. Start small and simple.
That's beautiful.
Asif, what did you most learn?
Yeah.
Most learn? What do you mean?
Well, when we're talking about like lessons we could offer or suggestions about how people can kind of,
Yeah, I mean, I think, you guys have said it well. Like, I think the one plug that I would do, and I think, Bruce, you've had some dealings with this organization, Interfaith Community for Detained Immigrants. I don't know, Jeff, if you've done anything with them, but I'm starting to get to know them, and they are doing things in the local prisons. So I would, check them out there, and I can send you the website, Lynn, ICDIChicago.org. Whether it's giving money to them or they are looking for volunteers. Now, with COVID, some of that might have, lessened a little bit, but they are looking for volunteers, definitely money to help out. So I know that, or I trust that organization for sure.
Would you repeat that again, Asif, the name of the organization?
Yeah, Interfaith Community for Detained Immigrants, ICDIChicago.org.
Great. We'll put it up after the.
But there's a lot, that's just in Chicago. There's lots of organizations across the country that are working intimately with impacted people being affected by immigration policies, that are working to dismantle the detention system for immigrants wherever you are. And it's pretty easy to be able to connect to them, and we can find ways to do that. Minimally, if you want to go on Facebook to Witness at the Border, there's a wealth of information there that you can get connected into and lost in. Go look up Team Brownsville in Brownsville that's doing the work down there. ICDI is a fantastic organization that we've been honored to work with over the years at Hakafa, more intimately as of late, prior to COVID. But every community that has immigrant detention has a group that's working to dismantle that.
Beautiful. Any last words, Jeff?
Now I'm going to sound hokey, but Bruce is the one that introduced the term.
It's okay.
It's such an honor. I love these two gentlemen, and I'm so grateful for where we are. Sometimes I think we're so in the moment, and we're so focused on what can we do next that we don't pause and just look back down the line and see back to a time when we didn't even know each other, or when we were just starting out, or when these trips were but a thought, we hadn't even taken the first one. And here we are hoping and waiting for COVID to abate so we can get back to this work together in the sense of taking trips. There's still work to be done now, as Asif said. And I'm just so grateful for the trajectory that God has put us on and that we keep saying yes to mutually. It's a beautiful and an ever growing and deepening thing. So I'm full of gratitude for it and for these two people.
I love that. Well, I feel very full in my heart just listening to all of your stories and hearing what you've gone through. And I'm grateful to be a part of this conversation right now. And hopefully everyone who's listening will share this with their friends and family, because I feel we all make a difference. You don't have to be a faith leader. You itself, each of us, make a difference. So I implore you, I urge you to share this story, get involved, take a part in doing something that's good in the world, because we all need to hear more positive stories. And with that, I thank you so much for listening. And my guests, Asif and Bruce,
Thank you,
Jeff, you are terrific. And let's have more good experiences together. Thank you.